plan is and the use permit go hand in hand, but it's the use permit that grants them the ability to mine. The reclamation plan is required because we've given them a use permit.
Right, but at the time they stop mining, we call up the reclamation plan, right?
Yes.
Unless there's an IMP in place.
Right. And so basically, what we're doing tonight is we're saying that we know they're not mining, we know they can't use the processing plant, but we're going to allow them another 5 years to make a decision on what they want to do. Is that pretty close to?
Pretty close, yeah.
Into a void period where it just extends everything and they don't have to go into reclamation.
No, I
But
totally understand.
This also extends it out so they can continue to bring this back later as a use permit.
Right, but if the property owner in 4.5 years decides this isn't going to work for me, I'm going to walk away, who's responsible at that point to reclaim the land?
The property owner has submitted a reclamation bond on file with the county that is able to be accessed by both the county and the state, and that's the mechanism that we hold.
And how much is the bond for?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
Is it enough to actually reclaim the land? That's my whole point here.
The state reviews that number, and they, first, our county consultant reviews that number and comes up with that number in a lot of cases. We submit that to the state. When we submit it to the state, we submit a form that says that we have reviewed the bond and approved it, and then the state then will either approve it or they'll tell us through part of the inspection and review that it's not enough, and we'll have to consult back with the operator.
Okay.
But the state reviews that number.
Okay, but we don't know what the number is.
I don't have it off the top of my head.
I don't have it out
Can bring it up
top of
file.
my head as well. I apologize.
They're woefully inadequate. I mean, I can
Yeah.
I can say that, like, it's just as a matter of principle. I don't think anyone in this room would disagree with me. They're like ridiculous as relates to actual costs. Said the mining guy from the back of the room. They're really, really low. And I should disclose this, too. I didn't think I needed to at the very beginning, but I was involved in litigation that actually closed down the Hillsdale rock quarry. It's the processing plant down below is owned by the Botello family. Botello family was my client. I don't think this has anything to do with this application on top, so I didn't view it, Barbara, as being a conflict. If you feel otherwise, tell me now, but I don't think it is. But I did, during the course of that work, I had a chance to see those financial assurances and that bonding, and I want to say it was like $30,000 bucks. I don't remember. Jim, do you remember? Jim, do you remember?
No.
Do you remember the SMARA amount for that site? I think it was 30 grand, wasn't it?
Something like that, but it's just for the bid up on top.
For on top. But that's what we're talking about here, is the mine on top. So I think
And while I don't know,
that wouldn't buy lunch for the guys doing reclamation.
I can tell you that now there is another digit added to that number.
300,000?
Well, I don't know if it's 300,000, but I think it's in the 100 range.
From my memory, please don't quote me, I think it's $175,000.
Okay. And the way that it works, the county hires a consultant. What's that consultant guy's name that drives around in
Who's,
Brown?
yeah, it's Benchmark Resources.
Benchmark. And then what's that guy's name? His last name's Brown, isn't
Yeah,
it?
Mr. Brown, Dave Brown.
Yeah, so he cruises around and comes up with these different amounts that then are submitted to the state, as the director said, so.
Well, Mr. Chair, just
It's an
because of your
imperfect system.
disclosure, I just want to make the disclosure that I did talk with Anthony Botello quite a bit about this.
Okay,
And I got quite a bit of information from him.
okay.
And, my fear is if the county has to reclaim this, are we protected financially?
Yeah. Yeah. And then a bigger question is, when is the county ever protected? When is the amount ever high enough for true reclamation, you know? I think it's, like I said, I think they're usually woefully inadequate. But can we solve all those problems tonight? Probably not, so. Any other planning commissioner comments? No? If not, is there a proposed motion?
Following findings, conditions, and status on this.
Commissioner Pierce, I think your microphone, there you go.
That's a change. I move we approve the interim management plan and with the following findings and conditions of approval and the staff changes.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Culler seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed?
The motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Lowe dissenting. Okay, number 5.
This item is a staff recommending to the Planning Commission that they review and make a recommendation for approval to the Board of Supervisors to amend Section 25.45 of the San Bernardino County Code with regards to some zoning procedures. The proposed ordinance will make public noticing requirements and processing of zoning amendments consistent with state law and allow zoning amendments to be proposed by staff as opposed to a formal resolution from the board. You recall earlier this year, we had an issue where we where we had a zone change and we did the state required noticing but not the county required noticing and had to postpone the project and come back to do it while we did that. This is going to make that more consistent and streamline the noticing process so that we're all consistent, and then also remove the requirement that the board instigate zone changes.
Is the what?
Remove the requirement that the board instigate zone changes. Barbara is familiar with this as well, if you want to chime in, and she also has a red line copy for you if you'd like to.
This went to the board on May 6, 2014, and they adopted a resolution of intention to start the process of these changes to the zoning code. Back in April or May, there was something that prompted looking at our code to make sure that the noticing provisions were consistent with state law. Sometimes we have greater noticing requirements than are required by state law. For example, if it's certain types of like zoning changes would require all the changes that are required by state law. But in other cases, like a minor change to our zoning ordinance itself, where it's not actually a zone change of a specific property, may not require all those noticing requirements, and you could process it as like a normal code amendment. So that's one of the changes. The other change, so it just references in this one that noticing is going to be pursuant to state law. It indicates that zoning change does not have to be started by resolution of intention by the Planning Commission or Board of Supervisors. Normally, it would be done by direction. It wouldn't be a formal resolution, but normally you'd receive direction from staff. Staff would receive normally direction from the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors to proceed forward, because normally staff, doesn't bring forth things without knowing that there's a desire to go forth with it. But it does allow items to be brought forth without a formal resolution of intention, which eliminates one additional meeting for, let's say, a change to the zoning ordinance, because now you'd have to start with a resolution of intention, then you'd come back and then do the formal hearings before the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. So it eliminates one step. And then it makes the appeals section consistent with state law, so that the person can file the appeal within 5 days after the Planning Commission files its recommendation with the clerk of the board. So if the Planning Commission is slow in filing its recommendation with the clerk of the board, the person has 5 days after that recommendation is filed with the clerk of the board to file their appeal. So that was made consistent with state law. It indicates that any petition for amendment may be withdrawn upon written application of a majority of persons who signed that petition. That was just a change that if somebody doesn't want to proceed forward with their petition, whether or not they can withdraw it with or without the Planning Commission's consent. Let's see, and so I think that there are just maybe ideas to make this one chapter better, but I leave it up to the Planning Commission whether or not they actually like these changes or want to proceed forward or not inclined, and you can take some of them and leave some of them, whatever the Planning Commission wants.
Okay, let's hear from the Planning Commission. Commissioner Lowe, did you have any thoughts on this?
No comments.
Anyone from the public want to speak on this agenda item? Armand? No? Public Works? No? Well, okay, so public comments closed. back to the commission. I like the changes. Obviously, zone changes are still going to have to comply with CEQA. There's still going to be CEQA analysis. And if it's an effort to increase expediency and save staff time and meeting time and everything else, I don't know why we would not do it. That's a double negative. So those are my 2 cents. Anyone else? Okay. So what's the request here, staff? Do you want a recommendation to the board?
Yes. Adopt the resolution.
Resolution recommending to the board?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion that we pass a resolution recommending to the San Benito County Board of Supervisors that these proposed changes be made to the zoning ordinance?
So moved?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
You
Right.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever we can do to make things more expedient, sounds great.
I'm opposed.
Pardon me?
I'm opposed.
You're opposed? Don't say something then. Maybe you'll. Okay, so the vote passed 4-1 with Commissioner Lowe dissenting for reasons that she's keeping secret. Just kidding, Pat. Okay, number 6.
This next item is a request for interpretation of a condition of approval on a project that was heard in May for, that was conditional use permit 1079-13, as well as a minor subdivision for Ecos Energy at 1850 Buena Vista Road. The conditions are concerning the buffers and the landscaping. So the applicant is requesting that the Planning Commission interpret the conditions to allow that the applicant install fence slats along the western fence line of the project and vegetation along the eastern fence line of the project. The conditions of approval, there's 2 conditions that are pertinent here. One is number 3, visual glare buffer, that says that the applicant shall install vegetation or fence slats along the western and eastern margins of the solar array field to reduce potential glare to be cast off from the project site. The applicant shall submit a landscape plan or a modified fencing plan to the Planning and Building Department for review and approval prior to issuance of a building permit. The selected mitigation plan shall be implemented by the applicant prior to the first date of the proposed project, that the proposed project becomes operational. That came out of the glint glare study, and I believe that was a mitigation measure that was required per CEQA. The other condition was proposed at the Planning Commission meeting, and that was number 22. Applicant shall install vegetation buffers along the western and eastern margins of the solar array field. So, based on the applicant's letter request, they're requesting that it be fence slats on one side and vegetation on the other. And I believe there's a representative from the applicant's team in the audience who may like to speak.
I think there is too. I think I saw him earlier. Okay, before we do that, any questions for staff?
Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Lowe?
Barbara, I was abstained from this because of a conflict I felt with the actual property owner. Since the project team basically is bringing this forward, should I step down from this discussion also?
I'm not sure, because I guess it would depend on maybe what the nature of the conflict was, but I saw that when I was looking at the minutes, and maybe it would be best just, I mean, I'm not saying
to
that it's
keep it-
required, but since you abstained for the first part, it could be if the board the commission decides to go forth with the change in the conditions of approval, it may come back to the Planning Commission, as a formal action, to amend the conditions of approval, so it's maybe better just to have it off, and we can look at that before,
then
if it
I'll
comes
recuse
back.
myself.
Okay. But I don't know how county council feels. She doesn't have to go all the way outside, right? She can just sit in the back. That's fine.
Technically, if you abstain because of a conflict, you're supposed to go outside.
Kind of outside. I always go in the little, I always open that door and go in that hallway. You can hear from the hallway. Okay, so let's just refresh everyone's memories on this deal. So this is a solar farm off of, what's that road?
Buena
Buena
Vista.
Vista.
Buena Vista. And we had a couple of meetings about it. There was a lot of opposition. None of the opposition, I don't think, is here tonight. Some of the opposition was focused upon the visual aesthetic, remember? and glare and what it looks like and so forth. So in order to mitigate that, then there were some conditions. I forget who said it, but it's condition 22. What was changed about that? Or someone said like that happened at a meeting or it was inserted at a meeting. How was it inserted? Well, excuse me. What was the intention behind it? Excuse me.
I'm looking to see if the minutes reflect that.
Do you remember, and Jason, you can chime in here too, but do you remember who inserted condition 22? Did that come from the planning commission? Did it come from the public? Because it's condition 22 that you're asking be changed or modified tonight, correct?
Right, exactly. And just going back to basically what the mitigation required, which was really designed to reduce glare impacts. It didn't have anything to do with creating a visual buffer, because if you go back and look at the initial study, it concluded that this project wouldn't have any visual impacts, because you might recall the profile of those solar arrays were pretty low to the ground. I think they were maybe 6 feet high, and they rotate with the sun. So at certain times of the day, they're only 4 feet, and there were roughly the project was roughly 1,200 feet from Buena Vista Road. So I think there was actually a visual simulation that was put up on the screen at that time, and you could barely even see it from most public viewing areas. So the slat landscape option was really designed to reduce glare, because the solar panels were rotating in an east-west direction. So the thought was maybe there'd be glare shooting out down the eastern perimeter, and maybe there'd be glare coming off the western perimeter. So the idea was, well, if you put a slat or you put landscaping, you would reduce those glare impacts. It wasn't really designed, it wasn't really intended, the landscape mitigation, to deal with visual impacts. But my client's okay with, Ecos is okay, they'll landscape that eastern side, they're fine with that, but because there are orchards on that west side, and the orchards frankly don't really care what a solar farm looks like, we thought it would be reasonable to allow the applicant to have the fence slats instead of landscaping on that side. That's why we're here. And I don't recall the genesis of the requirement for condition 22. I think when Ecos representative Brad was here giving the presentation, he talked about landscaping along the perimeter of the project, and maybe that prompted, maybe he's going to do landscaping along the whole thing. But the intention was never really to abandon that option to do fence slats. And so we're here today just to seek an interpretation to allow the applicant to allow him to do the fence slats on the side that faces the orchard, that's not really exposed to the open area that the eastern perimeter is exposed to.
And that orchard is Tony Alameda's orchard?
Correct. Yeah, correct.
And was he noticed with this? And Tony's not here, so I'm assuming he's fine with fence slats or landscaping, either way?
Everyone that was on our notification list received a copy of the agenda.
Have you heard anything, Jason, from Tony Alameda?
No, I didn't, and I talked to Brad Wilson today as well to see if he had heard anything from the neighbors, and he said no, nobody had contacted him.
Okay. Because originally, I don't know if you all remember, but Tony Alameda was concerned that the heat from these things might affect his, what is it, walnut trees? What kind of orchard is it, walnuts? So he was concerned about the heat from the solar panels having some kind of negative effect on his existing walnut orchard, and I don't know if a landscaping row of trees would provide some kind of heat buffer between solar panels. I don't even know if because Tony never came back. Remember, he was going to go out to the valley and check it out and come back and tell us, and he never did. But, so I guess those are all questions. But if he's not here and if he's not opposed, then to fence slats versus a row of trees. What kind of trees are you going to plant on the, what would it be? So on the one hand, it'd be fence slats. That's what you want.
Right.
You'd save a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because fence slats are cheaper than planting trees.
Right.
So it's all about money.
Yeah.
What kind of trees are you going to plant on the other sides?
I haven't seen the landscape plan. I think one may have been submitted to the county, so maybe Michael or Byron could address that.
The landscape plan was submitted. We haven't reviewed that plan as of yet,
Okay.
so I don't have that information available.
It was not consistent, though, with what the conditions of approval was. I believe the landscape plan did not completely landscape the western side, but then did include some landscaping on the Buena Vista Road side.
Correct. Yeah, there were several inconsistencies from the conditions to the original and secondary submittal of the landscape plan. So we are working with the applicant on that currently, and that's why we're here.
Okay. And all that can happen administratively. Right now, we just needed clarification on condition 22, fence slots versus a row of trees, so. Okay.
Well, they kind of,
Is that it from the public? If so, public comments closed, if I didn't do that already, to the commission? Any questions?
To the
thoughts,
commission?
Commissioner
I
Color?
want to hear that it's consistent, I guess is what it is.
Just from memory, it seems like there was a little bit of concern about the visual impacts to the area. You know, a lot of people were opposed because they didn't think it belonged there, was not in the right place for it. And I kind of think maybe part of the landscaping was to make it disappear a little bit. My personal feeling is I don't think full landscaping is really necessary, but it seems like putting some stuff out there to break up that 1,200 foot of fence line, it would not be a bad thing. You know, whether they're 40 or 50 feet apart, or, you know, just,
A compromise?
Yeah.
Soften
and
it?
I don't know how the applicant would feel about that, but, you know, because you do have to run irrigation the whole length that way, but it seems like.
Would it be like spacing out some landscaping along the
Yeah,
fence
just to
slats?
break up the fence
Break it up,
line.
rather than just creating a, you know, row of trees along that area,
Right.
just space it out so it breaks up some of the monotony of a fence.
Yeah.
I think the
That-
applicant would be amenable to that, and we could work with staff on that kind of plan. The concern was just basically, you know, creating, the whole purpose of the mitigation measure was really designed to deal with glare impacts.
Right.
But, you know, Brad's not here, but I'll say that, yeah, I'm sure he would work with staff to try to come up with a plan that makes sense, to try to spread it out a little bit.
Yeah. And that's just my opinion. I don't know how the rest of the commission feels.
I like it.
Okay.
Great
And
idea. It's a compromise.
just to interject, you know, as we know from Dunville, when the walnut orchard, I guess, came down, that the walnut orchard may not last forever. So that's just something for the planning commission to consider, that, you know, there could be some changes of use in the neighboring properties at some point in the future.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. So you want them to plant walnut trees then on the perimeter to ensure? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, right. We know there could be tract housing, you know, next to this, but in the meantime, okay. Anything else?
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Pierce.
I have the same recollection as you. This was, there was as much concern of turning this into a manufacturing-looking area with this project, and although some of it was used to shield the glare down Buena Vista, which was said to be into the report, and possibly hit some of the cars, and there could be some issues, that this visual buffer would be just as important, because there are other applicants that are talking about making other subdivisions in the area. Although Tony was concerned about the heat and stuff like that too, this green wall was basically really set up as a softening, just like we do with cell towers and making them trees or windmills or something.
Kind of an aesthetic thing.
Yeah, so it just softens everything down and all that. But we knew that you guys would know not to put in the wrong elements so you'd block your sun or anything like that too. And that walnut orchard could totally come down at any time if the crops fail, or he has a really, really awesome offer for development or something, because other stuff's going in out there. So I would still like to see, maybe you don't need it as much, maybe you can space it out a little bit more on that side with the walnut orchard. But I would look towards, having it be a really good visual barrier for the project, and you're more exposed on the other side,
Right.
on the east side.
Right.
So I think it should be pretty tight along in there.
Yeah, and I think that's, the intention was to, because of the east side was so exposed, that their thinking was, well, that's no issue for us, we'll do a ton of landscaping on there, but they didn't think because it was facing an orchard right now that they could just proceed with the fence slat. But I understand the concern about some sporadic landscaping to break up to the monotony, and I'm sure they'd be willing to do that.
Well, I'd like staff to actually get out there, take a look-see, and give the recommendation on what they feel would be the best for that on the walnut orchard side. If they feel that it needs to go in a much denser level to protect future, because that walnut orchard may not be permanent, I'd like staff to make the decision on that.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
You're on the hook.
The walnut orchard right now is there, but in the future, like there might be development. Maybe it's, they could work something, if there's a developer that comes in there, they can apply some landscaping at that time. Have one of those conditions, or I don't know if that can be doable from staff. If development goes in, maybe they should put a buffer there with some kind of landscaping.
Okay.
That would be a good solution as
future,
well. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure our client would be
Very
willing to
life on
do that.
that.
Yeah,
It's a little bit hard to enforce, though, without some kind of a financial mechanism or something. I mean, if they just say, well, yeah, we'll do it, then when the time comes, they're going to say, I don't remember saying that.
But if it's written down and that solar company said to do just about anything
yeah.
to stay, keep good neighbors.
Money.
Yeah.
You're saying,
I'm with Jeff. I think the trouble with it is, you know, they're creating an issue right now. They should mitigate that issue. If somebody else is gonna come in later and create other issues, they're gonna mitigate their own issues, but there's no obligation for them to mitigate the other stuff. Sorry about that. I'm trying to be incognito tonight. So they're only responsible for their issues. And if you bring another developer in that's going to go in alongside of them and say, okay, if you got an issue with this guy, you should just fix it yourself and bear the cost yourself. That's not fair to the next applicant that comes in next door. These guys, if they've created an issue and they've got a good project and they think it needs to go forward, they should mitigate their own. And then whatever issues the next applicant has next door and he creates, he pays for his own.
And they're 100% on board with mitigating their impacts. And, you know, there was an initial study, it identified impacts, didn't identify any visual impacts, identified glare impacts, and they would implement that mitigation measure that provided them with the option of the landscaping versus the fence slats. So they're 100% on board with mitigating the impacts of the project. My recollection from that hearing, I know there was some concerns about the visibility of that project, but I mean, if you look at the map, it's not visible from the orchard side.
okay.
But, you know,
So let's take stock of where we are.
okay.
We approved this project already. There's some ambiguity as regards condition 22 and what's required on that. Is it eastern fence line?
Western.
On the western fence line. The applicant is requesting that they not be required to plant the same type and number of trees that they're doing on the other property line, but instead do fence slats. Commissioner Culler has come up with what I'll call the color plan, which is to supplement the fence slats with tree planting of the type and variety and quantity that would be determined by administrative review, you working with staff. And I believe I heard Commissioner Pierce, although maybe not as clear, but I think you supported the color plan, correct?
Yeah, as
All right.
long as staff has the say and
That's right. Right, to be approved administratively, so they don't have to come back to the planning commission and all that, so they can do it over the counter, working with Byron or Michael and so forth. Okay, and then I said kind of under my breath that I liked the idea, so I'm a sign-on to the color plan also. Commissioner Rodriguez, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, well,
Okay,
it was going to be hard to do it in the future, just do something like color you mentioned.
yeah, I mean, it's just trees and stuff, it's not too much money, so. Okay, so, do you want, Commissioner Culler, do you want to,
plan,
do you want to,
move.
do you want to propose a motion that articulates the color plan better than I did?
Well,
Try that still move thing, maybe that'll work.
yes. It looks like what we're trying to do here is just interpret.
That's right.
So I would say that my interpretation is that there should be some vegetative buffer on both sides. The side near the walnut orchard can be less trees and incorporate the slats, and we'll let the planning department have a say in what is reasonable. Is that
Second
Makes
that.
sense?
All in favor?
aye?
Aye.
Is that clear enough for you,
Yeah,
Jason?
no, I got it. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah.
So you
I'll
got your
talk-
request for, let me just make it real clear. You got your request for fence slats, but plant some trees every once in a while, and have that once in a while be determined with staff.
No, we'll definitely work with staff, come up with a good
So
plan.
it's not just this ugly fence line.
Got it.
Make it pretty.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck with the project.
Can I update the planning commission just briefly on the items that are going before the board?
Sure.
Okay. The Measure J implementing ordinance was, had a public hearing on October 7th, and they waived reading, except introduction. It's coming back on the 21st for them
Okay.
to adopt it potentially.
Okay. What was the board vote on that, by the way?
Was it 4-1, I believe?
Who was one?
I
who was the
believe
dissent?
Supervisor Barrios was against it off the top of my head.
But it went 4-1?
Yes, I
And we were
think so.
4-0, weren't we?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
And I did see that it had passed Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara Planning Commission was 3-2.
Yeah, I listened to the minutes on that, and some of the main concerns were the cost to the applicant. Again, at the board, it passed 3-2 at the Board of Supervisors level with the cost. I haven't watched the whole Santa Barbara Planning Commission, Board of Supervisors meeting yet, but one of the supervisors I was watching was concerned about the cost to the applicant for the whole process.
Okay.
So that did get passed. The other thing is that we're bringing forth an urgency item to the board on the 21st. It's a urgency tree ordinance, tree protection ordinance that would protect mature trees 8 inches in diameter or greater in the RM and residential zones, R1 zones only. And if the board decides to go forth with that, then it would come back potentially to the planning commission at some point. So we'll see.
Okay. A tree protection ordinance, a new one.
Yes.
For our, for,
Existing?
There is a woodland
there's a
protection
valley,
ordinance.
there's a valley oak or an oak tree
Yeah,
preservation.
in
thing, right?
19.33, we have a woodland protection ordinance too. Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So-
Don't we have a clear-cut ordinance, or did that never pass?
Yeah, that's the one that we're referring to, but it protects parcels with 10% woodland coverage, or parcels that historically had 10% woodland coverage, but it doesn't protect individual trees. It protects more from, the coverage, the woodlands to indicates like canopy coverage. So this one, we'll see what happens. I'll update the planning commission after the board level, after the board meeting.
So the first approach on that tree issue is to say, hey, Board of Supervisors, is this something that you want, is this a direction you want to go down? And if they say yes, then you're going to bring it back and we'll do the heavy lifting on drafting the ordinance and the language and all that stuff? Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. So I'll let you know more. It's very, very preliminary right now, but we'll let you know more after the next Board of
Okay.
Supervisors meeting.
Okay,
And
awesome.
was this directed by the board?
It was brought forth by, primarily from one board member as an item that needed immediate attention.
Oh, interesting.
Is it going to be a specific type of tree or?
Right now, it's just 8 inches in diameter or greater. That would have to be worked out if we decide to go forward with, the county decides to go with the permanent tree protection ordinance. I've looked at a lot of tree protection ordinances from different cities and different counties, and there's a number of ways to draft them.
So then you would have to apply for a permit or something?
Yes, yes. So this one's just a moratorium, a 45-day moratorium on cutting trees unless a certain exemption applies.
You say cutting, does that include knocking them down?
Yes, yes.
That's what they're doing right now.
No.
Yeah, and also damaging them, seriously harming them, et cetera.
What are the trees that are damaging your sidewalk and your driveway?
There's a number of exemptions there so that it can be removed if you get a determination that it interferes with public health, safety, or welfare or property.
What do you guys got against trees? Come
No,
on.
I love
are
trees.
nice. I love trees.
Some of the
So-
trees,
Should all-
I'll update the planning commission at the next meeting.
All right,
get
awesome.
into sewer lines and everything.
Fantastic. Byron, do you have any comments, director's report? Do you have any
I
comment?
really have nothing to report at this time. We are reviewing the draft environmental impact report for the general plan. So we're hoping to get that out and circulating soon. And if we haven't gotten the general plan on the website, do we have it on the website? Okay, so
The
that's
draft,
something.
draft general plans on the county website.
with the transition between consultants, it was difficult to get everything posted, and I think we figured it out now. So
Right.
now it is on the county website.
What about,
Find your way to the planning page, then find your way to the general plan. Do a plain text, planning, and then general plan.
okay. And and
That's much better.
the draft EIR is on the website for the general plan
Not yet,
too?
no, that's just being reviewed administratively.
Okay.
Once we finish our review, then we'll release it publicly.
Okay, great. I also wanted to welcome Commissioner Wanda Guibert from the San Juan Bautista Planning Commission, who's here with us tonight. And I've spoken with Commissioner Guibert about the possibility of meeting us with the San Juan Planning Commission like we're doing with the City of Hollister. So I think as regards the two incorporated cities, you've heard me say it before, the more we can all be on the same page with City of Hollister's general plan, City of San Juan's, the counties, to make sure they all, there's no conflicts between them. And I think communication's a good thing. So unless there's any other commissioner comments, is there a motion to adjourn? Yes, Commissioner Keller?
Yeah, I had a question, Byron. Have there been any new applications from the Ridgemark area?
No,
Have you seen?
no, we don't have any development applications in that area.
But there's something going on out there at Ridgemark.
What do you call it? Pre-development?
Well, yeah,
Oh, essentially.
we,
There's something
Yeah.
going on at Ridgemark. Everybody's heard about it. Brown Act, I know, Barbara. I
we
know.
don't want to talk to,
Under
you know, the
commis-
tree ordinance has just been prompted by a general consideration about what is necessary to protect trees in the county. Some things may bring it to our attention, but we're looking at trees generally in the residential area and what would be the best protections for the county, so,
Okay.
I have a question.
yes.
My understanding they're letting the lawn die. Are there any,
I don't want to talk about Ridgemark today. If you want to agendize it, if that's okay, I can also answer questions afterwards.
You take all night.
Okay.
Just not
Mr.
on,
Chair?
not on TV. Yeah.
But I'm happy to talk to you afterwards.
One thing I would like to see, because now projects are supposed to go to the Parks Commission first, so the park element is sort of okayed. And that way we know that's taken care of as it moves towards the Planning Commission.
Right.
I'd like to have probably a dual meeting between Parks and Planning Commission as well,
Excellent.
to sort of get us up to speed on what they're at, where they're looking towards, what their vision of parks for the county
I think that's
are in the future.
That's a
Because we're
wonderful
going to have
idea.
developments coming up.
Absolutely. And especially, like you said, Commissioner Pierce, some of the more large-scale developments where, you know, a park element is something that's to be considered, and open space and so forth. Jim, are you still on the Parks Commission? Can you talk about that with your commission, whether that, and Commissioner Pierce, you're not, are you?
Not anymore, no.
Okay. He does? So I don't know if you heard
Only when
him,
I'm
but
invited.
he's suggesting that the San Benito County Planning Commission get together with the Parks Commission and just get in sync on what it is you guys do even. That would be helpful to know. Uh-huh.
Probably should be on tape.
Oh, he can't be on tape?
He probably should be.
He should be on tape.
Yeah, so let me just repeat that so you don't have to come up here. So Parks Commissioner Jim West has said that he thinks that it would be a good idea, too, for the two commissions to get together because of a few things that are coming down the pike. So, all right, that sounds like a great idea. Anything else, anyone? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Two motions. Are there 2 seconds?
Second.
2 seconds. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you, everyone. See you next month.